We need to have a conversation about your behavior, Natalie. My mother-in-law's voice cuts through the silence of her pristine living room, and I realize immediately that this isn't a casual Sunday dinner. Margaret sits in her usual wingback chair like a queen on her throne, my husband Ryan on the sofa to her right, and his younger sister Sophia perched on the ottoman, tissues already clutched in her hand. They've left exactly one chair for me, positioned directly in the center of the room, facing all of them. But here's the thing about being the reliable one your whole life. You learn to read a room in seconds, and this room is screaming ambush. Before you say anything, Margaret continues, her perfectly manicured hands folded in her lap. I want you to know we're doing this because we care about this family, about what's best for everyone. I set my purse down slowly, taking in the scene. Ryan won't meet my eyes. Sophia is already crying, which is rich considering I haven't said a word yet. And Margaret has that expression she gets when she's about to explain why something that benefits her is actually for my own good. Of course, I say, sitting down in the designated chair. I'm listening. The pattern started small, the way these things always do. 6 months after Ryan and I got married, Sophia showed up at our apartment at midnight, sobbing about her boyfriend kicking her out. Could she stay just a few days? Ryan looked at me with those puppy dog eyes, and I said yes because that's what you do for family, right? 3 weeks later, she was still there, eating our food, using our Netflix, and leaving her art supplies all over our living room. When I gently suggested she might want to start looking for her own place, Margaret called me within an hour. Sophia is going through a difficult time, Natalie. Surely you understand what it means to support family? I understood. I understood that I was working 50-hour weeks as an architect while Sophia slept until noon and called it creative recovery time. But I also understood that I'd only been in this family for 6 months. So I smiled and said, of course, take all the time you need. She took 4 more months. Then came the money. Small amounts at first. Ryan would mention that Sophia needed help with her phone bill, her car insurance, her art studio membership. It was always temporary, always just until she got back on her feet, always presented as if saying no would make me the villain in some story I didn't know I was part of. I started tracking it about a year ago. Not because I'm controlling, but because our savings account kept shrinking, and Ryan kept saying he had no idea why. Turns out, Margaret had been calling him directly, telling him Sophia needed help, and Ryan would transfer money without telling me. In 18 months, we'd given his sister $42,000. $42,000 that Sophia spent on art supplies, trendy cafes, and a portfolio that had yet to earn her a single paid commission. But I'm not here to talk about money. At least, that's not why they called this little intervention. Ryan told us about your ultimatum, Margaret says now, her tone dripping with disapproval. About how you threatened to separate your finances unless Sophia paid back what she owed. I look at Ryan. Is that how you described our conversation? He shifts uncomfortably. That's basically what you said. I said I wanted to create a budget that we both agreed to follow. I said I wanted transparency about where our money was going. I said I thought it was reasonable to expect a repayment plan for a loan that size. It's not a loan, Sophia bursts out, her voice high and tight. It's family helping family. You wouldn't understand because you don't have siblings. The familiar sting of that particular knife doesn't hurt as much as it used to. I'm an only child. Parents divorced when I was 12. Raised primarily by my grandmother who passed away during my first year of college. I learned early that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. You're right, I say calmly. I don't have siblings, but I do know what it's like to work for what I have. That's exactly the kind of attitude we wanted to address, Margaret interrupts. This family has always supported each other. We share what we have, but you've brought this transactional mindset into our dynamic, and it's causing problems. Margaret, we gave Sophia $42,000, and we're grateful, Sophia says, tears streaming down her face. But the way you keep throwing it in my face makes me feel terrible, like I'm some kind of burden. I look at Ryan again, waiting for him to back me up, to explain that I've never once thrown anything in Sophia's face, but he's studying his hands like they're the most fascinating thing he's ever seen. There's something else, Margaret says, and her tone shifts into something almost gentle, which is when I know the real knife is coming. Ryan shared with us that you've been cold lately, distant. He feels like you're prioritizing your career over your marriage. My stomach drops, not because it's true, but because I recognize the setup. I've seen Margaret do this to her own husband, Richard, dozens of times. She creates a narrative, gets everyone to agree to it, and suddenly the victim is the villain. Last month, Margaret continues, When Ryan needed you at his company dinner, you chose to stay late at work instead. He was humiliated, Natalie. He needed his wife there, and you couldn't be bothered. I was finishing a presentation for a client meeting the next morning. Ryan knew about it for 3 weeks. There's always an excuse with you, Sophia says, her voice bitter. Always something more important than family. This is when it clicks into place. The real reason for this little tribunal. It's not about the money. Not really. It's about control. Margaret has always controlled every aspect of her children's lives. And I'm the first person who's ever pushed back. Ryan's ex-girlfriends either fell in line immediately or were frozen out until they left. I'm the first one who married him, and Margaret still hasn't forgiven me for that. I think what we're all trying to say, Ryan finally speaks up, his voice quiet, is that maybe you need to reflect on your priorities. On what being part of this family really means. I look at my husband, this man I've loved for 7 years, and I see it clearly now. He's not on my side. He's never been on my side. He's been Margaret's son first, Sophia's brother second, and my husband somewhere distant third. You're right, I say, and watch relief flood all 3 of their faces. I do need to reflect on what family means. I'm so glad you understand, Margaret says, smiling now. You see, successful women like yourself need to remember that there are more important things than career and money. Family is about sacrifice, about being generous, Sophia adds, wiping her eyes. About supporting each other, Ryan says, finally looking at me. I nod slowly, pulling my phone from my purse. Can I show you something? I think it will help clarify my priorities. Margaret waves her hand graciously. Of course, dear. I pull up my email and start reading. This is from my boss, dated 3 weeks ago. Natalie, I'm pleased to offer you the senior architect position at our Manhattan office. The role comes with a 40% salary increase and full relocation package. The room goes very quiet. I accepted the position 2 weeks ago. I continue. My last day at the Boston office is Friday. I've already found an apartment in Greenwich Village. The movers come next Wednesday. Ryan's face has gone pale. You what? I also filed for divorce last Monday. You should be receiving the papers at work tomorrow. I didn't want to ruin your weekend. You can't be serious, Margaret says, but her voice has lost its confidence. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I stand up, smoothing my dress. But here's the part I think you'll find really interesting, Margaret. Do you remember about 8 months ago when you asked me to review the family trust documents? You said you wanted an architect's eye on the property valuations? Her face shifts from shock to something approaching fear. I'm not just an architect, Margaret. I minored in finance, and I used to do forensic work for real estate litigation. So when I looked at those documents, I noticed some interesting things. Like how you've been taking distributions from Richard's father's trust, distributions that were supposed to be split equally among all beneficiaries, including Richard. I don't know what you're talking about, Margaret says, but her voice is tight. I think you do. I think you've been forging Richard's signature on distribution requests for the past 6 years, taking money that should have been shared with Ryan and Sophia's father. According to my calculations, you've embezzled roughly $370,000. The silence is deafening. Of course, I haven't told anyone, I say casually. Yet, I figured I'd give you the courtesy of a conversation first. You know, since we're family and all. Sophia is staring at her mother with her mouth open. Ryan looks like he might be sick. You're bluffing, Margaret says, but there's no conviction in it. I have copies of everything. The original trust documents, the distribution requests, the bank statements. My lawyer has them in a safe deposit box with instructions on what to do if anything happens to me. Very dramatic, I know, but I watch a lot of true crime. I pick up my purse, slinging it over my shoulder. Here's what's going to happen. I'm leaving. I'm moving to New York, starting my new job, and living my life. You're going to sign the divorce papers without contest. No claims to my retirement, no claims to my inheritance from my grandmother, nothing. Clean break. Natalie, wait, Ryan starts, but I hold up my hand. I'm not finished. Sophia, you're going to get a job, a real job, and you're going to start paying rent to your mother, since I assume you'll be moving back in here. Sophia's tears have stopped. She's just staring at me now. And Margaret, you're going to talk to Richard. You're going to tell him what you've been doing with the trust money, and then you're going to figure out how to make it right, because if I hear even a whisper that you're continuing this little scheme, every document I have goes straight to the trustees and the district attorney. I head toward the door, then pause and turn back. Oh, and Ryan? That company dinner you were so upset about me missing? I wasn't actually working late. I was meeting with a divorce lawyer. I missed it because I was sitting in his office, explaining how your mother has been manipulating you your entire life and watching you choose her over me at every single turn. He told me I had a slam dunk case for emotional abandonment. I told him I just wanted out. Ryan stands up, his face red. You can't just leave like this. We can talk about it. We can fix this. No, I say simply. We can't. Because fixing this would require you to be a husband instead of a son, and you're not capable of that. Margaret made sure of it. How dare you? Margaret starts. But I'm already opening the door. I dare, because I finally realized something. You called this meeting to put me in my place, to remind me that I'm an outsider who should be grateful to be part of this family. But you know what? This family is toxic, and I'm not grateful. I'm relieved to be leaving it. I walk out into the cool October evening, pulling my coat tighter around me. My hands are shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the absolute rush of finally saying everything I've been holding in for 5 years. My phone starts buzzing before I even reach my car. Ryan calling. Then a text from Sophia. Then another call from Ryan. I silence my phone and drive. The thing about being reliable is that people assume you'll always be there, waiting for them to appreciate you. They assume your patience is infinite, your forgiveness guaranteed. They assume you need them more than they need you. They assume wrong. 3 weeks ago, when Margaret had asked me to review those trust documents, I'd been looking for something completely different. I'd been trying to understand why Richard always seemed so defeated, so resigned. I thought maybe there were clauses in the trust that gave Margaret more power than he had, some legal explanation for why he let her control everything. Instead, I found fraud. Systematic, calculated fraud that had been going on since before Ryan and I even met. I didn't tell anyone at first. I sat with it, trying to decide what it meant, what I should do about it. And then I had a different realization. This was my exit strategy. This was the leverage I needed to get out clean, without years of court battles, without Margaret turning Ryan against me even more than she already had. So I made my plan. I applied for jobs in other cities. I updated my resume. I called divorce lawyers. I opened my own bank account and started slowly moving my paychecks there. I changed my passwords. I created a new email address that Ryan didn't know about. I documented everything, backed everything up, prepared for every contingency. When my boss called with the Manhattan offer, I cried. Not because I was sad to leave Boston, but because I was so relieved that there was actually a way out, that I wasn't trapped, that I didn't have to spend the rest of my life being the responsible one who never got any credit for it. The divorce papers were filed last Monday morning at 9 a.m. The consultation with the forensic accountant who verified Margaret's fraud was at 2 p.m. That same day, everything timed perfectly, everything documented, everything airtight. I've always been good at planning. It's what makes me a good architect. You have to see the whole structure before you start building, anticipate problems before they arise, create solutions before they're needed. I just finally applied those same skills to my personal life. My apartment in Boston is already mostly packed. The furniture that's actually mine, the art I bought before I met Ryan, the books and clothes and kitchen supplies that belong only to me. It's amazing how little space I actually take up when I subtract everything that was ours. The movers come Wednesday. I fly to New York Thursday morning. My new job starts the following Monday. By this time next week, I'll be living in a studio apartment in Greenwich Village with exposed brick walls and a fire escape that looks out over the street. I'll be starting over at 31 years old, and I've never been more excited about anything in my life. My phone is still buzzing. 17 missed calls now, 6 texts from Ryan, ranging from, "Please come back so we can talk," to, "You're being completely unreasonable," 3 texts from Sophia, mostly just question marks and crying emojis. Nothing from Margaret yet, but I'm sure that's coming. I pull into the parking garage of my apartment building and sit in my car for a moment, just breathing. The adrenaline is starting to fade, and in its place is something that feels almost like grief. Not for Ryan or his family, but for the version of myself who thought she could make this work, who thought that being accommodating enough, understanding enough, patient enough, would eventually earn her a place in that family. That version of me died somewhere between Margaret's 9th criticism of my career and Ryan's 20th time choosing his mother over his wife. I'm not her anymore, and I don't want to be. Inside my apartment, I pour myself a glass of wine and pull out my laptop. There's an email from my new boss with information about the team I'll be leading in Manhattan. 12 people, 3 major projects already in motion, and a client list that includes some of the most prestigious names in commercial real estate. This is the job I've been working toward my entire career, and I'm getting it at 31 instead of 40 because I finally stopped letting other people make me smaller. My phone rings again. This time it's a number I don't recognize, but the area code is local. I let it go to voicemail, then listen to the message. Natalie, this is Richard. Please call me back when you get this. I need to talk to you about what you told Margaret tonight. I stare at the phone, considering. Richard has always been kind to me in a distant, defeated sort of way. He's Margaret's husband the way a prisoner is married to his cell, but he's also Ryan's father, and I'm not sure I want to have that conversation. I call him back anyway. Natalie, he answers immediately. Thank you for calling back. Of course. What did you want to talk about? There's a long pause. Is it true? What you said about the trust? Yes, I have documentation if you want to see it. Another pause. Longer this time. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't figure out what. Every time I asked Margaret about the distributions, she'd have some explanation that sounded reasonable, but the numbers never quite added up. She's been forging your signature on distribution requests, taking money that should have been split among all beneficiaries and keeping it for herself. Jesus. His voice cracks. How much? About $370,000 over 6 years. The sound he makes is somewhere between a laugh and a sob. My father's entire legacy. She's been stealing my father's legacy. I'm sorry, Richard. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. No, he says firmly. Don't apologize. You did me a favor. You gave me proof of something I've felt for years but couldn't name. You gave me a way out. A way out? Margaret called me 30 minutes ago, crying, begging me not to listen to anything you said. Told me you were lying, trying to destroy the family because you're bitter about the divorce. And I realized something sitting here listening to her. I believed you more than I believed my own wife. I don't know what to say to that. I've been looking at divorce attorneys' websites for the past 20 minutes, Richard continues, trying to figure out if I'm too old to start over. Then I thought, hell, you're doing it at 31. I can do it at 63. Richard, I'm leaving her, Natalie. I'm leaving her, and I'm using that trust documentation you found to make sure she doesn't get a penny more than she's legally entitled to. Which, given that she's been committing fraud, might not be much at all. What about Ryan and Sophia? They're adults. They'll figure it out. Ryan's going to have to decide if he wants to be Margaret's son or his own person. And Sophia, he sighs. Sophia needs to learn that the world doesn't owe her anything just because she's pretty and creative. Maybe this will be the wake-up call she needs. We talk for another 20 minutes. Richard asks if I can send him copies of the documentation. And I agree, with the caveat that my lawyer handles the actual transfer. He tells me he's proud of me for getting out, that he wishes he'd had the courage to do it years ago. He says Margaret turned his sons into extensions of herself, and he's ashamed that he let it happen. When we hang up, I feel lighter somehow. Like the weight of that family isn't just mine to carry anymore. Over the next week, things happen fast. Ryan shows up at my apartment on Tuesday night, begging me to reconsider. I let him in long enough to explain that there's nothing to reconsider, that this isn't a negotiation, that it's over. He cries. He apologizes. He promises to change, to choose me over his mother, to go to therapy, to do whatever it takes. It's too late, I tell him gently. It's been too late for a long time. I just finally accepted it. He leaves angry, slamming the door behind him. The divorce papers arrive at his office the next morning, and according to my lawyer, he signs them by noon. No contest, no fight, just his signature, and a note that says, I hope you're happy. I am happy. Not in the way he means it, not in some vindictive I showed them way, but happy in the sense that I can breathe fully for the first time in years. Happy in the sense that I'm moving toward something instead of running from it. The movers come on Wednesday, and I'm shocked by how little I actually own when everything is packed. 10 boxes of books, 3 boxes of kitchenware, 2 boxes of work files, and my clothes. Everything else belonged to Ryan, or to both of us, or was never really mine to begin with. Thursday morning, I'm on a train to New York. I'd considered flying, but there's something about the journey that feels important, like I need to physically travel the distance between my old life and my new one. Sophia texts me somewhere around New Haven. Ryan is a mess. Are you happy now? I type and delete 3 different responses before settling on. I hope Ryan finds the help he needs, but that's not my responsibility anymore. She doesn't respond. Margaret never contacts me directly, but I hear through Richard that she's threatening legal action over the trust accusations. My lawyer sends her a very polite letter, explaining exactly how discovery works in fraud cases, and how many people would see those documents if she chose to pursue legal action against me. She drops it within 48 hours. New York is overwhelming in the best possible way. My studio apartment is tiny but perfect, with those exposed brick walls I dreamed about, and a view of the street below where life happens at all hours. My first day at the new firm, I meet my team, and they're brilliant and welcoming and treat me like a colleague, not like someone who needs to prove she belongs there. I work long hours that first month, partly because there's so much to learn, and partly because going home to an empty apartment still feels strange. But it's a good strange. A chosen strange. Every morning I wake up and remember that I don't have to manage anyone's emotions but my own. Every evening I come home to silence that's peaceful instead of tense. 6 weeks after I leave Boston, Richard files for divorce. He sends me a text with just, "Did it. Thank you." I send back a champagne emoji and mean it. 8 weeks after I leave, I get a message from an unknown number. It's Sophia. I got a job. At a coffee shop. It's not much, but it's something. I'm sorry for how I treated you. You were right about a lot of things. I stare at the message for a long time before responding. I'm proud of you. That takes courage. She doesn't respond immediately, but 3 days later she sends, "Mom's not speaking to me. Says I betrayed the family by getting a regular job. That says more about her than it does about you." Yeah. I'm starting to see that. We don't become friends. Exactly. But we text occasionally. These brief updates that feel like someone slowly waking up from a long sleep. She tells me she's applying to jobs that might actually use her art degree. She tells me Ryan moved back in with Margaret and they're working through things together, which sounds exhausting. She tells me Richard is dating someone, a widow he met at a grief support group, and that Margaret is furious about it. I tell her about my projects, about the city, about the friends I'm starting to make. I don't tell her that I'm happier than I've ever been, because that feels like rubbing it in, but I think she knows anyway. 3 months after I leave Boston, my team completes a major project ahead of schedule and under budget. My boss takes us all out to celebrate, and afterward, I'm walking home through the village when I realize I'm smiling at nothing in particular. Just smiling because it's a beautiful night and I'm walking through one of the most amazing cities in the world, and tomorrow I get to go to a job I love. My phone buzzes. A text from my lawyer. Divorce finalized. You're officially free. I stop walking and just stand there on the sidewalk. People flowing around me like water around a stone. Free. I'm free. Not just from Ryan or Margaret or that whole toxic dynamic. Free from the version of myself who thought she had to earn love by being convenient. Free from the belief that staying was somehow more noble than leaving. Free from the idea that family is about blood instead of choice. I start walking again, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I can hear Margaret's voice from that night in her living room. This family has always supported each other. She was wrong about a lot of things, but she was especially wrong about that. That family supported itself, at my expense, until I finally stopped letting them. And now I'm building something different, a life where support goes both ways, where people show up not because they're obligated but because they want to, where being reliable is appreciated, not exploited. 6 months after I leave Boston, I meet someone. His name is Marcus. He's a photographer. And when I tell him about my ex-husband and his family, he doesn't say, "But their family," or "Maybe you should have tried harder." He just says, "Wow, good for you for getting out. We take it slow." I'm in no rush to jump into anything serious. But it's nice. Having someone who thinks my independence is attractive instead of threatening. Someone who has his own life and career and isn't looking for a mother figure disguised as a wife. 1 year after I leave Boston, I'm promoted to lead architect on a major commercial project in Brooklyn. It's the kind of project that can make or break a career, and my boss chose me to lead it. "You've got something most people don't," he tells me when he offers me the position. "You know how to build something from the ground up, and you're not afraid to tear down what isn't working." He's talking about architecture, but he might as well be talking about my life. I accept the position, and that night, I call Richard to tell him. He's remarried now, to the widow from the grief support group, and he sounds happier than I've ever heard him. Margaret tried to come to the wedding, he tells me. Showed up uninvited, demanded to be let in. I had security escort her out. How did Ryan take that? He's not speaking to me. Says I'm destroying the family. Richard laughs, but it's not bitter. Just tired. That boy still hasn't figured out that Margaret destroyed this family years ago. I'm just finally acknowledging it. We talk about my new project, his new wife, the life we're both building in the aftermath of leaving. Before we hang up, he says, "Thank you, Natalie, for finding those documents, for telling me the truth. You saved my life. You saved your own life, Richard. I just showed you where the door was." Fair enough, but I'm still grateful. The Brooklyn project takes 8 months and ends up being featured in Architectural Digest. My career takes off in ways I couldn't have imagined. I buy a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn Heights with a view of the Manhattan skyline. I adopt a cat I name Blueprint. Marcus and I are still together, still taking it slow, still figuring out what we want from each other. Life isn't perfect. I have bad days where I wonder if I did the right thing, if I could have tried harder, if I gave up too easily. But those days are rare and getting rarer. Most days, I wake up grateful for the courage to leave, grateful for the life I'm building, grateful that I finally learned that being strong doesn't mean accepting unacceptable things. 2 years after I leave Boston, Sophia comes to visit me in New York. She's working as a graphic designer now, making decent money, living in her own apartment. She's cut her hair short and has a confidence about her that I never saw before. "I'm sorry," she says over coffee in my favorite Brooklyn cafe. "For all of it. For taking your money. For not defending you to Mom. For making everything about me. I appreciate that," I say, and I mean it. "Ryan's in therapy now," she tells me. "Finally. He's starting to see how messed up everything was. He asked me to tell you he's sorry too. He has my number if he wants to tell me himself." She nods, understanding. Mom's alone now. Dad's happy with his new wife. Ryan's pulling away, and I'm building my own life. She keeps calling, trying to guilt us into coming back, but... Sophia shakes her head. It doesn't work anymore. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. No, I agree. You can't. We talk for hours that day, about who we were and who we're becoming, about family and what it really means, about the courage it takes to choose yourself when everyone around you is telling you that's selfish. When she leaves, she hugs me tightly. "You were always the strong one," she says. "I just wish I'd seen it sooner." "You're seeing it now," I tell her. That's what matters. I watch her walk away down the Brooklyn street, and I think about that night in Margaret's living room, about sitting in that single chair, surrounded by people who expected me to apologize for having boundaries, about the moment I realized I didn't owe them anything. Not my money, not my time, not my patience, not my presence. They called that meeting to put me in my place. Instead, I found my place, and it was never with them. My phone buzzes. A text from Marcus. "Dinner tonight? I found a new Thai place in the East Village." I smile and text back. "Perfect. See you at 7? I head back to my apartment, to my life, to the future I built by walking away from people who thought I should be grateful to be diminished. And for the first time in my life, I'm exactly who I want to be. No apologies required.